Hi there. Welcome to the online section 801 of Criminal Evidence and Procedure. I am Professor Rashlo. I will be your instructor this semester, and I'm looking forward to working with you all. So, just to get started, I have my email right here and the link to my Zoom room that you can use during my office hours on Monday, Wednesday from 10 to 11:30. I am asking that you send me an email to let me know just to make sure that I'm here, that I have the software up and running, um, that I didn't run to the restroom or something along those lines. Additionally, I'm available other times. Just again, send me an email and we'll make an appointment. So this is where you're going to land every time you open our class. And to get started with content, go ahead and just click on modules onto your left, and everything will be broken down by week with the exception of the top module, which is going to have the syllabus, this welcome video, and information about all the assignments this semester. Otherwise, every week will look pretty similar. You're going to have a video lecture, a PowerPoint, and some type of assignment due. So first things first, I will pull up our syllabus for the semester. The top again has my contact information. We also have our textbook, which is Garland Criminal Evidence 8th edition. You are going to need the book, especially in an online format of the class. The goals of this class are to kind of teach about criminal evidence and what it's like in a courtroom, why some evidence is admissible and other evidence is not. So we're going to talk about hearsay, we're going to talk about corpus delicti, we're going to talk about as well as some search and seizure things again. As far as what you're going to be doing in the class this semester, there are going to be 3 exams. Each exam is worth 20 points out of 100, so each exam is 20% of your grade. You're going to have 22 minutes to answer 20 multiple choice true/false questions. Exam 1 is week 5. This is, I think, week 10 for exam 2, and then after Thanksgiving, week 16 here. We are also going to have 10 discussion questions. They're going to each be worth 2 points, so this is a grand total of 20 points, another 20% of your grade. And you're going to listen to a podcast and develop some direct or cross-examination questions and a short summary or review of the podcast for another 20 points. So that'll be our last 20 points. Again, out of 100, so 20, 40, 60, 80, and 100. And this is our grading scale. I do have a note on my syllabus just asking that you communicate with me this semester. I understand that things might not look like normal for a lot of us. We can make sure that we all successfully complete this class. Just make sure you're reaching out and communicating as much as you're able to. The next part of the syllabus deals with inclusion. The Department of Criminal Justice is very committed to diversity and an inclusive classroom environment. So please do not denigrate or insult anyone, especially on the discussion boards or in your written assignments. If you have any religious holidays this semester, please let me know. We can make alternate arrangements. The Learning Center is doing WebEx this semester, so they are available. And then there is the plagiarism statement. Plagiarism looks like buying the paper on the internet, turning in a paper you wrote for another class, having someone else write your paper, copying and pasting without appropriate citations, okay? Students with disability statement. If you have a need of these services, please just reach out to them. And if you have a letter, please make sure that I get it. Diversity, and then the last part is the Cardinal Care Pledge before we get into our schedule. Largely, there's going to be 1 chapter a week, and you will have 1 assignment due each week, with the exception of Thanksgiving, where I have nothing assigned that week, and I just hope that you guys enjoy the holiday. All right, let's talk about the podcast assignment next. So For this assignment, you will select a true crime podcast. Now, if you want to choose a podcast that I have not already pre-approved here, you have to reach out and let me and ask me if it will work. Not every true crime podcast is gonna fit well with this assignment. The two that are pre-approved, the first one is Detective Trap. I'm gonna really note and flag this right here. This podcast contains descriptions of sexual violence, graphic descriptions of how the homicides were carried out, and as well as very vivid descriptions of the interview or interrogation, depending on which perspective you're coming at it, from police officer or from criminal defense attorney. So this is not going to be suitable for everyone. And I just want everyone to know that right out of the gate. But for those of you who are interested, this podcast follows Detective Jaleesa Trapp as she investigates 2 serial killers connected to the disappearance of 5 women, all of whom happen to have engaged in prostitution. If you select this podcast, you're going to develop direct examination questions from the perspective of a prosecutor for Detective Trapp as your witness. So you are going to be imagining that you are in the trial for one of these two alleged serial killers, and you are going to be laying out your case with Detective Trapp, who's going to be an extremely important witness. So this podcast has 5 episodes. Each one is between 48 and 49 minutes long. The alternative podcast is Serial Season 1. There's a note here as well. There is a clean version of this podcast, a cleaned up version on YouTube. So if you are concerned about language, if you have concerns about kind of more graphic descriptions, I encourage you to select Serial and then search it for the clean version on YouTube. This podcast is hosted by Sarah Koenig and investigates the Aiden Syed case. Syed was convicted of the homicide of his former girlfriend, Heyman Lee, in 1998, and he has since maintained that he is innocent of the crime. This case was recently in front of the Supreme Court for another appellate review, and it was denied. So this case still has a very active appellate track record. Again, because Syed has consistently and forcefully maintained that he is innocent of the crime. If you select this podcast, you have a little more flexibility. You can choose to either be a prosecutor or a defense attorney, and you can choose to develop either direct or cross-examination questions for either Syed himself or Jay Wilds, who is an important person in this podcast. Now, if it were me, I would choose to be a prosecutor in the direct questions for Jay Wilds, or I would choose to be a defense attorney and write direct questions for Syed, because he's going to be your witness, and we'll learn more about what that means as the semester goes. When you do this, you need to let the reader know if you choose this one. And for both podcasts, you're going to answer all the questions you write. So you need to make sure you can answer the questions you write. This podcast has 12 episodes that are between 27 and 56 minutes. So step 1 is picking. Step 2 is listening to the podcast. You're going to want to take some notes while you do this so you don't have to go back and listen again. As you do it, I want you to think about kind of some big picture areas. One is going to be the background. How are you going to introduce your witness to the jury, okay, or the judge? Is this witness credible, and why or why not? And how can you support or bolster the credibility? Or if you're approaching this as a defense attorney for the serial case, how can you damage this witness's credibility? You're going to want to take note of what kinds of facts this witness can provide, facts related to the homicides in these cases. And if or how you can impeach that witness, can you bolster this witness? Also, just take notes about your overall impression and the ways that this podcast relates to our course content. Step 3 is to do a little bit of outside research. I want you to find one credible outside source about the podcast and cite it. So I do not want you to get a review of the podcast, like, oh, this podcast is great or horrible for whatever reason. I want you to find an article about the case itself, just to give you a different perspective on the events described. And then I want you to find one academic source related to the rules of evidence and cite it at the end of the assignment. I would recommend that you use a law review article search in Nexus Uni for the Ball State Library. Okay. Step 4 of this assignment is to assess. Think about the podcast. Think about the questions you're going to develop. Remember that your goal here is to persuade and make a strong case to a potential juror. And then just think about the podcast in general. How does it relate to this class? Are there any strong or weak points for you? Step 5 is to develop and write cross-examination questions in a short review. For your direct or cross-examination questions, you need to have 5 to 8 questions about your witness's background. For instance, for Detective Trapp, you want to ask her how long she's been a police officer, how long she's been a homicide detective, things like that, to build up her credibility. You're going to want to ask 12 to 18 questions about the homicide, the facts that this witness can give you about the homicide. Don't ask compound questions, so only one question per question, okay? So don't have an and or a but or an or. If you have that, then it needs to be a different question. And you want to make sure that you thoroughly cover everything this witness can provide. So for Detective Trapp, you don't want to spend all of your questions at the garbage dump where she finds the first body. You want to spread it out across the whole investigation. And the same thing for the Aid and Syed test. You want to spread out the questions across the witness's whole involvement. There are parts of the book and some links on Canvas that will be helpful to you. And then you're going to want to have 3 to 7 questions about how credible your witness is, or potentially impeaching that witness. And then last, I want you to have a summary of the podcast, the strengths and weaknesses, how it tied in, were there any evidentiary issues, what types of evidence did they talk about, how credible were the witnesses. So at the end of the day, you're going to have 20 to 33 cross-examination questions. These are going to be formal, as if being used in a courtroom in front of a judge for a jury. I want you to have a heading for background questions, events of the crime, and witness credibility. Each question is going to have a bullet point at the front of it underneath the heading. And then you need to answer the questions that you ask. And then you're going to write a 4 to 6 paragraphs, so about a page review of the podcast. So you need to have an introduction, a summary, and a conclusion to just tie this podcast into course concepts. This needs to be in a traditional academic voice. Your intended audience is me. And you need to cite your sources both in the text and in the reference page. All right, so this is your larger assignment that you're going to be working on throughout the semester. I'm going to hop back over into our Canvas. The other assignment that you will have this semester are discussion boards. There are 10 discussion boards. Each one's worth 2 points. That adds up to 20% of your grade. I want to make sure that you answer all aspects of the question. So you're going to be graded on, did you write a relevant post? Did you actually answer the questions? Is it on the right topic? Did you cite, either be via page number or link to any source that you used? If I respond to your post with a follow-up question, you need to answer it. You are not required to answer any classmates' posts or respond to any classmates' posts unless something is just really interesting to you and you hope to develop a further conversation. All right. And again, just when in doubt, send an email or ask to Zoom. There is a voluntary introduction discussion board. I hope you do that. I really like to get to know students. It gets a little harder online, but this is something that helps me kind of just get to know you a little bit more. I look forward to working with each of you throughout the course of this semester.